All right, everybody, welcome back to Behind the Nine. We are rolling along here. Having a lot of fun doing this, having a lot of fun talking to all the guys that make it happen on the nine car, put in the hard work, put in the effort to get it done. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Alan Gustafson. I am the crew chief of the nine, and I also your interviewer for Behind the Nine. So, we've got our interviewee over here. So this is the guy. We're getting down to the nuts and bolts now, which is cool. Got to talk to Tony. This is the guy from basically windshield to windshield, floorboard to roof, everything inside that driver's cockpit is he's responsible for that. And really, with today's roster and the way things are going, responsible for a lot more than that. But without further ado, we'll bring in Scotty H. Scott Honan. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man.
Good.
Having a lot of fun chatting with you guys. I'm sure this will be no exception. So yeah, you're man, we got to start. You have had a long career, a long time in the sport, many faceted, lots of experience doing a lot of different things. So let's talk about the 20 plus years you've spent in this sport and how you got to this point.
Well, really, I mean, it starts like probably like a lot of our stories. Grew up kind of around racing. My family dabbled in it a little bit. I had cousins and uncles that raced, so it was always kind of close by, but it was never 100% directly me and my direct family. But it was always close enough to where it always kind of drew interest. I actually grew up in the northwest corner of Connecticut, so there's a road course up there called Lime Rock Park, and spent a lot of time there with my dad, who was a sports car fanatic. And we went and we would go on Memorial Day and Labor Day was their big events, and we would go there and just really as a kid just kind of watch and check it out. And then once I got old enough and started to realize what was happening, I kind of hitched a ride a couple times with my other family members and went modified racing and late model racing, which was a whole nother gamut of the sport. And
So,
just kind of got to
so
check out a bunch of stuff.
that was Stafford. Is that
Yep,
what?
Stafford Motor Speedway was where we modified and late model raced.
So I've never been, but I want to talk about that a little bit because man, that place has got a lot of history. There's a lot of people who have gone on to be successful in every forms of NASCAR racing, and a lot of the top drivers, a lot of the top crew members. I mean, that's a hotbed for racing, so it's got to be a pretty cool spot.
Yeah, I mean, a matter of fact, Bo Gunning, Randy LaJoy, guys like that actually drove my uncle's modified when I was a kid. So it was pretty cool. I actually knew Randy when I was just a little kid, and we reconnected when I moved down here to North Carolina. So it's been a lot of fun to catch up and talk about old war stories every once in a while.
You're certainly in good shape. You're physically fit. You're not a little guy, but you're not the prototypical 6 foot 2, 3 Jackman. So you made that go, which is a great accomplishment. That's you had a good career jacking the car. So you kind of bucked the odds. You're like the Rudy of Jackman here. You bucked the odds on this whole. You bucked the odds
the
on this whole thing.
the Rudy of Jackman. I've actually never heard that, but you know what? That's the
No, I
great.
just made it up. I mean, it just.
That's the greatest ever. So, no, you're right though. It was really one of those things where people kept telling me, you can't do this. You're not the guy. You're not physically the guy to do this. And it's funny because I think that's almost what fueled my fire a little bit. Is when somebody said I couldn't do it, it was almost more of a, hey, watch this kind of thing. I bet you I can. And I've always liked that kind of that underdog role, and just really taking on the initiative and the challenge and the competitiveness of it. And I really like that position because it really brought me most to remind me of what sports were more like, where you were kind of the quarterback of the team, or the pitcher or the catcher, if you want to put it into that role, because you were kind of, nothing can happen without you. So really you get to take over that role and be a leader. And that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed the competitive part of it, but most of all, I enjoyed the team part of it and the competition, because that's really what I grew up on. I grew up on loving sports, playing a lot of sports. I wanted to be a football player and a baseball player like a lot of kids do growing up. But but that's what I could really bring in and still fuel that competitive fire on a athletic level, not just a racing level. So it was a lot of fun for me, and I enjoyed the challenge tremendously.
Yeah, that's cool. So you did this for a while. How many years were you jacked? I know in the Cup Series.
Yep.
Did you jack in the other divisions
Yep.
also?
Did. I started Xfinity, jacking in the Xfinity series, and then went from there and actually got Robby Gaughan liked my competitive nature, I guess you could say, or whatever, and just really we just really hit it off. And he gave me an opportunity to jack his Cup car, and that was really one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. Was just somebody believing in me like Robby did, and I went over there and was had a lot of fun, got to really enjoy racing at the Cup level from the athletic side of it, and did that for 3 years, but on a total across all series for 17 years. And I'm very fortunate. I don't think that's going to happen for a lot of people, and was able to do it at a very high level. When if you get down to the actual nuts and bolts of jackmen and how many there are on any given Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night, back when I was jacking, there was only 43 people in the world that did that. So you really have to sit down and look at the numbers. And yes, don't get me wrong, I wasn't jacking, your race car or the 48 or something like that. But still, for me to be a kid out of the Northwest corner of Connecticut, man, I'm proud of it. And I owe a lot of that to my family and my dad for just instilling that competitive nature in me and really making it happen. I'm very proud of it. And I'll carry that for a long time.
Yeah, you should, as you should be. I mean, like you said, to the odds, you boil down the numbers to get to that level, to do it in probably an undersized fashion, and to do it for 17 years is certainly an amazing accomplishment. I got to ask you this, and I know this is a bit off topic, and this isn't necessarily related to the nine, but you've worked for two of the most interesting personalities in racing, right?
Yes.
With Robby Gaughan
Yep.
and Brendan Gaughan, who I know both, not as well as you do, but certainly know both and have competed against both. And both of those guys are they're just characters, man. They're just absolute characters. So through those experiences with those guys, what you got to have a story or two that's like, oh, I cannot believe this, right?
Well, if you go and you talk about Robby Gaughan, ultimately there's many experiences, and of course over the course of 3 years, lots of stuff happened with Rob. But there's two things that stick out in my mind, and one is he is the ultimate of really amazing people. He's a incredible race car driver, and not only is he an incredible race car driver, he has a vision of things as far as the mechanical side, the driving side, the business side. There's so much that I learned from being at Robby's and working for him that it's even hard to explain, just because he was so hands-on with everything. And when you got to be around him, there was always something that you were learning. Either it was something really good and sometimes not necessarily the right thing to do. So you kind of had to dictate on which one to pick, but there was always a lesson to be learned. And he's still one of the best drivers I've ever seen. I got to do the Baja 1000 with him, so that was an
That's
extremely
cool.
cool thing. And
Yeah.
just as far as riding in a trophy truck or even just a side by side, it's still he's just naturally gifted, and he's naturally gifted across all forms of aspects of life. Really, he's a really cool dude, and we're not as close as we used to be. And sometimes it's a bummer. I hate it, but I do follow him on Instagram and his kid, and it looks like he's having a great time and a blast. So I'm happy for him.
Yeah, yeah. What stands out to me is I remember him coming up in Indy cars, right? Winning IndyCar races really fast, really good. Knew he came from the off-road scene, gets into stock cars really fast,
Yep.
really competitive, makes lots of waves, runs well, and then runs the Baja, runs the different disciplines of motorsport. So yeah, he's a super interesting guy. So everybody's buddy, everybody's. I don't know that Brendan has somebody who isn't his friend, or at least maybe for a short period of time. But after that. Like, so
Very
what
rare.
was it like with Brandon?
It's almost the polar opposite where everything is fun. Your atmosphere has to be laid back. He won't let it be tense. He doesn't want it to be uptight. He didn't want you to think that the whole world depended on one thing. Like it was all about fun for him. And he used to tell me all the time, he's like, I don't want to race if I don't enjoy it. So the minute I don't enjoy it is the minute I'm not going to do it anymore, or I get old, which he considers himself now. So I think that's why he's in his last year of racing. But he's only a year older than I am. So if he's old, then I'm old. But he's just fun. I mean, he's fun on the radio. He's fun in life. He's fun in Vegas. He's fun in Kentucky. It doesn't matter where he is. He is all about fun, and that's it. But he's a great friend of mine. We talk probably at least once a week still. Just about different things and just aspects of life and things like that. And he's always got something going, and he's a million miles an hour. But Brendan Gaughan's a great person, and he's truly one of my dearest friends, and probably will be for a long time. At least I hope so. Anyway.
So I think a lot of people at home don't know. You say, hey, he's an interior specialist. So what is the interior specialist? Is it cup holders or what? So there's a lot that goes into it. I'll do my best to frame it up. Like I said, from basically windshield to back glass to front glass, from floorboard to roof. You've got the seat, which is hugely important. Seat fit, seat liners, seat belts, drink system, steering wheels, steering column, shifters, pedals, radios, mirrors, side mirrors, interior hoses, cooling, windows. Like, what am I missing? Like, there's a lot going on in there, and ultimately you're responsible for taking care of, that amongst other things. That's your primary duty. You're responsible for taking care of all that. So tell everybody a little bit about that.
Well, basically, the first thing, and this is kind of my order of how I consider things of importance, and the first thing ultimately is the safety aspect of it. It's a thing that can weigh heavy on your mind, and I think you've got to really have your arms and your head wrapped around the safety side of it, because you ultimately, when the car fires off and rolls down the road, that's ultimately what you think of first. You want to keep your driver safe, not only for your peace of mind, but for him, his family, his fans, the team, everybody. So you really look at that. But then, so you're looking at fire suits, helmets, gloves, shoes, seat belts, seats, all that stuff that goes into keeping him contained in the race car and very safe in all aspects of racing. But along with that safety part of it, you got to keep him hydrated. So then you've got to worry about his drink bottle and making sure that he's got the right drink and the right amount of drink, and make sure that it doesn't leak out all over the floor. Which, yes, it happens. It does happen. There's times that things like that happen, and that's part of racing. But the drink bottle leaking out on the floor is minimal compared to making a mistake or having a failure in the safety aspect. So that's really your main concern. But then you go on, you've got electrical, you've got all your dash wiring, all your stuff that goes into that, everything as far as the shifter, transmission. It starts to run outside of the cockpit of the race car. So you look at cooling. So you've got to get the cooling to the driver somehow to keep him cool. Well, that's got to go to a window. So then now you're looking at the window, and you got to deal with that aspect. So basically everything that goes outside comes inside at some point. You just basically try to control your area and make sure that you can really keep contained and keep that area as simple as possible, because that way, if there is a problem, you can diagnose it quickly. You can fix it during the race quickly. Like, say the drink bottle does leak and it runs out. Well, you know that you can give him bottles and you have a backup plan. So ultimately, you want to do your job perfect, but we all know that nobody's perfect. So you limit your mistakes, and basically just cross your T's and dot your I's and go racing. And at the end of the day, it's best when the interior is filled with Gatorade.
Before we leave, I got to ask you, all your time, all your experience. You got a funny story for me? You got something that stands out to you? Something that is just too good to pass up?
I think ultimately, there's tons of funny stories, but I'll keep this one close to our team and really the 9 car in particular. But when I came aboard in May of almost 2 years ago now, so it'll be we'll actually celebrate our 2-year anniversary here in a couple of weeks. But I came aboard and myself and a couple other guys came on all at the same time, and we walked in and you could really feel the tension of when's Chase going to win? Chase has got to win. We're at that point, and it's like you could feel it, but nobody ever really talked about it. It was kind of one of those things that you could just sense you could just sense it. It wasn't even like a big pressure thing. You could just sense everybody's, was eager to get Chase his win and get that ball rolling because he'd been so close. Well, obviously we go and we do what we set out to do 2 months into me being here, and it's awesome. So we win the race. Everything's good. Everybody's happy. We fly home, and I was like, man, what do we do now? So they're like, all right, everybody, we're going to Tony's. And Tony, I think, was on your last program, but they're like, everybody's going to Tony's. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, let's go to Tony's. Well, I didn't really, I don't know. I guess I kind of knew what to expect. Like, we're going to go party and have a good time. Well, we go to Tony's, and he has this nice house in a nice neighborhood, and we're out there and we're having fun. Well, the next thing I know, there's fireworks shooting off, and somebody's got their chainsaw out, and we're cutting a pallet up for the bonfire that we're having, and just all kinds of this craziness. And I'm just standing around, and of course you're laughing at everything that's happening, because at that point in time, everything is hilarious because it's probably 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, you just get that, you after laughing, you kind of get that emotional where you just drop down and settle. And after laughing our butts off the whole time and having a good time, you could almost just see everybody kind of lose like 5 pounds. Like, all the guys that were there, everybody just kind of chilled out, and we all just sat around. And I think it was Tony or somebody was like, man, we finally get to do this. Like, this is the coolest thing. We finally get to celebrate this win. And everybody, I think, was just, everybody was just happy, having fun. But I think that's just, it's kind of it's funny because in my mind, it's funny because I remember all the things that happened, but at the end of the day, it was just like this big relief. And that's what made it probably the most fun, was that everybody that had worked so hard, and all the guys that were on the team, like yourself and Josh and all those guys that had worked so hard to try to make it happen and been so close, to finally be able to be a part of it with them. That was cool. That was a lot of fun.
That is cool. That is cool. I'm going to tell a little story on you. We had a little meeting in the off season. Times were a little tough. I sat down with Scott, and the one thing Scott told me was, I want to win a championship. Let's go win that championship. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody watching. Appreciate all the fans joining in. Like us, share us, watch us, thumb up us, whatever. Tune in next week. We'll have some more fun. Thanks, Scott, a bunch for coming on.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure. And,
Thank you.